Did you know that 1.86 Malaysians work and live overseas? Wow, that's a big number, isn't it? In today's video, I want to explore this question. Do overseas Malaysians want to retire back in Malaysia? Hi, my name is Fran, one half of the Corporate Breakout Couple. I'm Malaysian. I contribute to being one of the 1.86 million Malaysians working and living overseas. If you are new to this channel, my husband John, who's a Singaporean, and we call both Malaysia and Singapore our homes. And we've been retired in Penang for the last 2 years. So firstly, let's take a look at why Malaysians actually go overseas in the first place. The first reason, of course, is to further their education overseas. There are many ways for one to be able to study overseas, isn't it? For example, some can go on scholarships, some can do twinning programs, which means, it's 1+3 or a 2+1 or a 2+2, which means that the first few years you actually study in Malaysia and then the balance of the years you finish up in an overseas country. And there are also some who study from as early as diploma all the way to degree, even masters, on their parents' sponsorship. Second reason why Malaysians move overseas is for better work opportunities. By the way, I'm not referring to only the Malaysians working in Singapore, by the way, which is 1.13 million out of the 1.86 million Malaysians working. They are actually based in Singapore. I'm actually referring to the Malaysians working all over the world. Work opportunities come in many types and forms. It could be that their field of study or the field that they practice in isn't so popular in Malaysia, therefore they need to go overseas to actually practice it. A lot of Malaysians also go overseas for career advancement and new opportunities and experiences. I had a friend who jumped at the opportunity to work in India for a year or two, and when he came back to Malaysia, his career just took off in leaps and bounds. I also have friends who studied in US, worked for a while, and when they wanted to relocate back to Malaysia, the package that they had offered was a huge one and they immediately went into middle management position. The third reason why Malaysians work and live overseas is because they married a spouse from a different country and they followed that spouse to live in the country where the spouse is from. The final reason, of course, is money. Now, we can't run away from that fact, right? I have a lot of relatives and friends living all over the world, America, UK, Australia, and Singapore. And the commonality for them is actually the currency strength of that particular country. For example, my two uncles who actually relocated to Australia in the mid-80s with their families. Back then, the exchange rate was 1 Australian dollar was 1.6 Malaysian ringgit. Fast forward to 2024, it is 1 Australian dollar to 3.09 ringgit. This means that whatever ringgit they converted in the mid-80s to the Australian dollar has nearly doubled over the last 30-odd years. So getting back to the questions, do overseas Malaysians want to retire back in Malaysia? Well, the first point I want to highlight is that usually people who migrate overseas, they don't think about retirement so far in advance. Why? Well, because when they usually live overseas or move overseas, they're usually younger, right? Either in their 20s, 30s, or 40s. Usually when one first moves overseas, or even if you have been working there or living there for a long time, you're always, striving for your career, raising young families. You're busy with all these things such that your retirement is at the back of your mind and you only revisit it or visit it for the first time in your life only when your children has grown up, moved away, or your career is starting to sunset. Let's talk about the reasons why one would want to retire or move back to Malaysia. The first reason is parents. When one moves overseas, usually the parents don't come along. They would prefer to be back in Malaysia where they already have their network and their friends. I'm currently in my 40s and I already have friends who are now living overseas and they're already thinking of moving back to Malaysia because they have aging parents who are in their 70s, even in their 80s, and maybe of poor health. Another possibility is that the grass isn't greener on the other side. Many Malaysians who live in Malaysia always have the preconceived notion that life overseas is very rosy, people are earning a lot of money and things are very good. And the reason why they think that is because every time an overseas Malaysian comes back to Malaysia, they spend a lot of money, right? They spend a lot of money on eating, they bring back a lot of souvenirs. So the Malaysians on this side will think that, wow, life must be treating you pretty good overseas, isn't it? I myself have lived in the US, I've lived in Singapore, and I can tell you that living overseas as a foreigner is not a bed of roses. In countries like Australia, New Zealand, UK and America, a lot of things are DIY. If your roof leaks, you have to be your own handyman. If your pipe bursts, you have to be your own handyman. In Malaysia though, if your pipe bursts, you just pick up a car and go, "Hello, Aling, can you come and fix my pipe?" "Okay, thank you." And the guy comes and charges you maybe 50 ringgit to fix a pipe. It is that easy and simple. And cheap. Some Malaysians might not be able to assimilate that well into the adoptive country, so they might stay on because their job is there, their circle of friends is there, their network is there, but the moment they retire, they might consider moving back to Malaysia. Another reason why perhaps overseas Malaysians want to retire in Malaysia, of course, is the fantastic exchange rate. I'm in this Facebook group where it's made up of majority of Malaysians living overseas, and recently there was a poll that someone did which asked, will any of you would like to consider moving back to Malaysia to retire? And guess what? It was quite a high percentage that said yes, they would, because once they convert back their dollars, pounds, Sing dollars, Australian dollars, wow, they say yes, they can have a pretty good retired life in Malaysia. In 2020 and 2021, COVID actually made a lot of overseas Malaysians realize that living overseas can be heartbreaking. I know a lot of people, close friends included, which lost parents in Malaysia while they themselves were stuck overseas and they couldn't come back. Some of the parents even passed away while they themselves were on the aeroplane coming back to Malaysia. It was indeed very heartbreaking. Unfortunately, this is the price that we overseas Malaysians must be willing to pay when we choose to relocate overseas. And I can tell you that the number one fear of every overseas Malaysian is actually the loss of a loved one back in Malaysia, and we are not there. We also know of people who regretted becoming citizens of their adopted country. Usually these people are the ones who went to the country to live or to work early in life, in their 20s or 30s. They started to raise a family, and now that their children are all big and they've grown up and left the nest, now they have decided to retire and they wanted to actually come back to Malaysia. But however, they can't do so, and some of them don't qualify for MM2H. Of course, on the flip side, there are some Malaysians who won't want to come back to Malaysia to retire because they've already put deep roots into their adopted country and they're very happy there. The lesson that I've learned as someone who has lived in multiple countries is that we cannot choose the country that we are born in, but we certainly can choose the country that we want to live in and contribute to as an adult. Malaysia is a wonderful country. A lot of overseas Malaysians, when they get together, they'll talk about how they miss the people, the food, the culture, and the warm hospitality of Malaysians. So actually the answer is yes. Many Malaysians who live overseas eventually do want to come back to Malaysia to retire. And that's good for the country, isn't it? This is great news for the economy of Malaysia. They're bringing in their foreign currency to spend in Malaysia. My personal opinion is that there should be more efforts made by Malaysia to entice overseas Malaysians to come back home to live and work and retire. In my research, I could only find one program that's encouraging overseas Malaysians to come back to Malaysia, and that is by Michael Page, a recruitment company, and it's called Returning Malaysians, Malaysia Tanah Airku. We are always seeing increasing reports of the brain drain in Malaysia, 5.5% on a global average, which is actually very, very high. So instead of complaining about the brain drain in Malaysia, why don't you make more efforts to bring back those brains back into Malaysia? That is my personal opinion. Anyway, if you're an overseas Malaysian and you're watching this, let us know in the comments below if you would like to retire in Malaysia. What would be the key reason for you? We would love to hear from you. Drop in the comments. Thanks so much for watching this video. My name is Fran, one half of the Corporate Breakout Couple. Please like this video, share this with all your Malaysian friends, and remember to subscribe to our channel so that we can do more videos like this for you guys, Malaysians, Singaporeans, and the rest of the world. See you again in the next video. Bye-bye!